In our previous session, we had just left Joseph's 10 brothers kneeling down to him with their faces to the ground, just like his dreams had predicted they would. And now we continue in in chapter 42, verses 7 to 12. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he recognized them, but made himself strange to them, and spoke roughly to them. And he said to them, "Where are you from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." Though he recognized them, he made sure to take no notice of them as his relatives, but behaved himself towards them as he did other foreigners. Yet he spoke more roughly to them than he would have to other foreigners. He put on a stern countenance, speaking in a rough, surly manner to them, and basically, with his line of questioning, he was asking, "What is your business here?" Folks, don't forget, Joseph had previously, before he was in charge of Egypt and the feeding of Egypt, don't forget, Joseph was in charge for at least 2 years of the toughest and worst federal penitentiary, the prison in the basement of Potiphar's home, in the dungeon. So he knew how to do how to ask questions and how to interrogate people. So Joseph knew his brethren, but they did not know him. Do you think he was going to tell them who he was right away? So to understand what went on, let's continue. You see, this shouldn't be strange that he was actually able to recognize him and they couldn't recognize him. They were fully grown men when they sold him while he was still a teenager. They were in their usual shepherd's clothes while he wore his official robes with the gold chain and everything else. They would never have dreamed of him as governor over Egypt, though he was probably expecting them. Besides, it could never have crossed their minds that he, whom they sold as a slave, would ever be governor over the land of Egypt with the authority of a pharaoh himself. You know what? They would never, never even imagine that. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, "Ye are spies to see the nakedness of the land you've come." Well, Joseph now knew his dreams were divine in origin. Well, by this time, after all, he did interpret other dreams. And though he had already forgiven them, make no mistake, he had already forgiven them. Because he wouldn't be there if they hadn't sold him as a slave. He wouldn't be there to save a whole nation. He wouldn't be in the position to save his homeland. So Joseph now knew that his dreams were divine. Though he had already forgiven them, he needed to find out if they had changed. So, Having been in charge of one of the worst prisons in Egypt, like I just said, he had learned to be a master interrogator. Before I go on, don't you think Joseph knew by the time they were released at Pharaoh's birthday which one of them was guilty and which one was not? Just a question. Ye are spies, Joseph said. This was a suspicious accusation commonly made regarding strangers in almost all Mideastern countries. Even now, down to the 21st century, all those thousands of years. Now, Joseph knew his brethren were not spies. Of course he knew that. Come on. But some commentaries accuse Joseph of being cruel against them with the view of getting even. But you need to remember that he was sustaining, he was preserving the part of a ruler and using this to get them to open up about themselves. They needed to talk to him. He wasn't ready to reveal himself yet. He accused them of being spies that came to survey the weakness or nakedness of the land. And they said to him, "No, my lord, but to buy food your servants came." Of course they would deny being spies, even to the point of calling him their lord. Now they assured him they only came to buy food. Of course we knew that already. We're all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. See, their reasoning was that if they all came from a single family whose father merely sent his 10 sons to buy food, it would be reasonable to suppose that you see, multiple families would be involved in spying out different parts of the kingdom. They're all one family coming to one place. No, so furthermore, they call themselves true men. True men means we're honest. Where have we heard that before? With this, they were telling Joseph they were honest, upright, and sincere in what they said. Nor would they dare to tell a lie. After all, you're next to Pharaoh, right? This is all implied in what they answered. See, they detested the charge and even the idea of being called spies. Then he said to them, "No, but to see the nakedness of the land you've come." His accusation already yielded the self-proclaimed information. They were all brothers, 10 brothers. And when they said we're all one man's sons, Joseph already was finding out, without asking them, that his father was probably still alive. By making the accusation of being spies stand to defend themselves, they would most probably be opening up about what was going on at home. And of course, that was the information Joseph was anxious to know. He would also be able to find out how they would handle pressure and to see if they had changed with maturity. Folks, by this time, Joseph was a man of experience and knowledge of human nature. Before he was going to reconcile with his brothers, he wanted to make sure that they had changed and that they were ready to receive him and he was ready to receive them. So, again, he he would also be able to find out how they could handle pressure, and to see if they had changed with maturity. You know, folks, I was wondering what I was going to do with today's session when we study about Joseph's line of interrogation, why he would continue mercilessly to call them spies. Well, it was his line of interrogation. And you know what? He wanted to see if they changed with maturity. And that is really an interesting question. It's an interesting question that we could apply to ourselves. Since we first asked Jesus into our lives, have we matured and grown in our faith? Or are we still spoon-fed in our thoughts and ideas like a little baby? Are we still ruled by vindictiveness? Are we still ruled by our old hates and by our old unforgiveness? You see, I pray that we could all say, God's changing me to what I ought to be. Could you say that? God's changing me to what I ought to be. You see, that change for the better ought to be able to be tested. Oh, yes. If we're truly sold out to the Lord, we're going to be tested and tried. And is it, above all, is it noticed by those around us?